This is the return of Tankobon, Tankobon 2, Tankobon Z, Bankobon, Tankobon Super. This week we're going over Kimagure Orange Road, the manga and anime for our return. My name is Cole Greco, and join me as usual is my co-host, Jude Knoll. Jude, how's it going?
I'm very tired and formerly wet, and every part of my body that was in contact with fabric is screaming out in pain right now because I did a 15K race this morning. It was originally supposed to be another time. It got moved up because of the weather, and it didn't really help at all. It was pouring rain for like the first 5 minutes of the race.
Mm-hmm.
My shoes were completely soaked. Every part of my body was soaked. I ended up still like getting the time that I was looking for, but I don't think anybody who took part in the race had a good time at all. It was pretty miserable. And I'm not looking forward to how I'm gonna feel tomorrow morning.
Yeah,
But
it's.
yeah,
I assume it's one of those that like you run it and everyone else does the same thing. Where like if you don't hit quite the time you wanted, you're sort of like, well, you kind of blame it on the rain and stuff, but it still just
yeah,
feels awful. Anytime like the weather sort of has to hamper your whatever your performance or something, it's like it's okay. You can be like, whatever, it is what it is, but it still sucks. It's like I went out there and ran over 9 miles, and it's like you can't even really take stock in your result unless you did really well, and then it's like I did really well despite the rain.
yeah. Yeah, there is one section that was like completely just like this uphill steep climb for
Mm-hmm.
almost half a mile. And after that, I was just like, I'm not going to even care how I do after this. I'm
Yeah.
just ready for this to be over.
Yeah,
But
that's
I'm
brutal.
glad for it to have been over. I ended
Mm-hmm.
up going to Skyline afterward and I got one of those green noodle three ways.
Nice.
So I'm feeling good now.
There you go. I door dashed to Skyline last night, so
Oh, let's
I'm
go.
I'm in the same spot. Yeah, yeah. Luckily, I've not had to get out in the rain. It is pouring right now, so I apologize to anyone who maybe hears the rain while watching or listening to the podcast. Because yeah, we're on video now. So
Yeah.
if you're on Spotify, I guess you can see that. We'll post it on YouTube, so you can see it there. So yeah, if you want to see our faces while listening to the Kamagre Orange Road discussion, you can do that. Well, all right. Do we just want to kind of hop into Kamagre Orange Road, and I guess we can kind of set up. So with the kind of we took some time off of Tankobon to sort of reformat what we were going to do with the show, just because like the constant weekly show and jump discussion was one, I think, like a little bit draining for both of us to have to keep keeping up with all
Yes.
these series, and also how many times can you be like Akana Banashi pretty good before you kind
I
of said it too many times.
I saw this notification on Twitter today, and it said that Blue Box was celebrating its fourth anniversary
Mm-hmm.
today, and I was like, "Oh my god!" Like it's been that long
Yep.
because that series was kind of new when we started
Mm-hmm.
this podcast.
It was definitely like under 100 chapters, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, because it was 100 chapters like while we were well into it. I think it was
Mm-hmm.
about like 30 something in when we started.
Yeah, yeah. It was not very very old. Also, I apologize. My dog is outside the door squeaking because she's terrified of the rain and storms. So, but is what it is. Yeah, I. It was pretty new. Akana Banashi had like just started. I'm trying to
hmm
think like what were the first series that like we did on the
Candy
show.
Flurry was one of them for sure.
Candy Flurry sounds right. I'm trying to think what else would have been in like that first batch of like stuff that we did for like the scouting reports and stuff.
Yeah. What was the one that was about like it was Red Hood something?
Red Hood Hunters Guild.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
one. That was pretty new when we started as well.
yeah. I know we did like Aliens Area was pretty
hmm
fresh. Doron Doraron,
I was
Fabricate 100, I think.
Ayashimon was another one. I was
Mm-hmm.
at the bookstore the other day and saw like an Ayashimon Volume One. That was one that I felt like had a lot of hype behind it
I
too.
liked
So
it. Yeah.
yeah, weird to even be reminded of that one's
Mm-hmm.
existence. But
Yeah. It's funny.
um,
But yeah, so with the kind of the new restructuring of the show, one, we're going to be recording every other week, so the podcast will come out every other week rather than weekly now. Gives us a little more time to like dive into some of this stuff and for me to edit video on my 11-year-old laptop. So it'll take 2 weeks to actually get the the video going. But and also we're going to be focusing more on just like not Shonen Jump, just whatever series or topic that we feel like. So in this instance, we've already kind of read all of Kimagure Orange Road, have that discussion ready here. So rather than doing like we did with say Assassination Classroom or Sket Dance, where kind of like week by week we would go over 2 or 3 volumes. This we're
Mhm.
just going to cover the manga all in one, or maybe if we decide to break it up into two, something like that, so that we're not. It'll be like less book club style. Here's what happened in this
Yeah.
chapter. More just here's what we think about this manga.
Yeah, I guess this is more of a review
Mm-hmm.
than like a summary.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'm hoping that it makes the podcast a little more evergreen because there's really like,
Mhm.
there's no reason to go back and listen to like whatever, the August 15th episode of Tankobon where they're going to talk about like, issue 25 or something.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but yeah, so this week's discussion is going to be Kimagure Orange Road. It's a kind of rom-com manga by Izumi Matsumoto that ran a Weekly Shonen Jump from 1984 to 1987. And just to give a kind of sense for what other things were running in the magazine, because it's hard for me sometimes when you go back this far to be like,
Mhm.
like what were the contemporaries? Um, and I just pulled up like a random Weekly Shonen Jump where I believe Kimagure Orange Road was the cover, and the table of contents for that one looks like Fist of the North Star, Kinnikuman, Kimagure Orange Road, Charge, Men's School, Dragon Ball, Captain Tsubasa, High School, Kimengumi, City Hunter, Kochikame, Suide ni Tochinkan, Silverfang, The Shooting Star Gin, Shape Up Run, Tobu, Kyoshitsu, Wingman, Black Knight Bat, and Just Ace. So I mean, some like big like legendary series, Fist of the North Star, Dragon Ball, Tsubasa, Kochikame. Uh,
City Hunter's a big one too. That's one you'll like
yeah,
if you're looking back at like retrospective stuff. That was a pretty big hit in the 80s.
yeah. City Hunter was pretty big, and there was one of these other ones that I looked at. I thought maybe it's this Charge Men's School. Actually, like
That one sounded familiar to me.
I
I can
think
look
it
that
like
up.
had placed pretty decent in the table of contents for a while.
Yeah, this is one of those like it looks like one of those like big like burly guy manga series that were
Okay.
really big at that time, where it's just like big muscly dudes.
Uh huh. Yeah. That's that sounds right. There's
Yeah,
it is funny in Kamagure Orange Road. I've been watching the anime. I haven't finished the anime, but I've just been like checking out to see what's up with it. And it's funny that era of like what like the kind of masculinity they put in the manga or in various
yeah,
manga, because there are a few characters in that or in the anime specifically where it's like they run into this like delinquent high schooler guy and it's like that dude looks like he's 47, like there's no way this guy's in high school. And then you have Dragon Ball, which like I guess is like very much the kind of the if not like the first one to do that kind of thing of like what if we made a cute character like really strong and powerful.
yeah,
It
yeah.
has to be like one of the first of them, probably Astro Boy predating it, but
Because I'm looking at the cover of this like Charge Men's private school, and
mm,
it's just like 10 sort of identical looking guys with like extremely rectangular heads.
mm-hmm.
They're all wearing that like delinquent button up
Yep,
shirt.
uh-huh.
Like I feel like I can tell what the vibe of this is for sure. And there's like even in the synopsis, the words like guts and like fiery are in there.
Yep,
So those
yeah,
are words they love to use in this type of series.
mm-hmm.
It does look like it was actually a gag manga at first, though. So maybe
Okay,
it's kind of like because I did say they all looked identical. Maybe it's kind of taking the piss out of this type of series, though.
mm-hmm. Yeah, actually like
We'll
riffing on them.
yeah, like I'd kind of have to maybe take a look at this one. Now I'm kind of interested.
And to give some background on Izumi Matsumoto, so this was his only like real true series. He had like a couple other series that he had done, but nothing that like really stuck. At least nothing that stuck even close to the realm of Kimagure Orange Road. And then in like the early 2000s, it seemed like he got sick. I guess there was like I was trying to do a little research on it and couldn't really find exactly, but like he had gotten in an accident or something when he was like pretty young, and then I guess this sickness injury kind of thing sort of stemmed from that, which effectively like stopped his output moving forward. So this is really the only Matsumoto work that we have. Like I said, I think there were a
Yeah.
couple others that maybe ran for like a handful of volumes, but nothing like super substantial.
Yeah, I'm looking like apparently he had one in 1990 that lasted for 2 years, and the title was Sesame Street. Like that was
Oh,
actually the,
yeah.
but because I looked this one up earlier. He had a couple others that I think were just like one offs or like
Mm-hmm.
little projects. I think Sesame Street was like another rom com type series that just happened to
To have the
have
name.
that name, but
Yeah. Well, I mean, even in this series, like Kimagure Orange Road doesn't. It doesn't. I don't even know if the Orange Road is mentioned in the manga. I was trying to like look up like what this means or anything like that, and I saw people on like the Reddit and stuff saying that like Orange Road is where the like cafe ABCB or Abacaba is,
mm.
but I don't remember them like ever explicitly saying like, yeah, we're going to ABCB. It's over on Orange Road or anything like that. There
Yeah.
in the anime, there's like a few times when they'll pass a street sign that has it, but I don't recall anything
Mm.
like that in the manga.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing because I looked up Kimagure and that means like indecision,
Yeah,
which I mean that's obvious if you watch the or you watch the series or read it.
hmm
But yeah, I was thinking the same thing. I was like orange supposed to be symbolic of something. I couldn't
I
really.
couldn't tell either.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, and my only kind of note on what's going on meets Matsumoto is do we think that he's the Derek Rose of manga?
yeah, I definitely think so. There's a lot of potential here.
hmm
And I think I'm looking at some of his contemporaries who are in a similar lane doing similar type of stuff. Like they went on to have really good
hmm
careers.
Well,
And part of me is like, if not for the injury, could he have been up there with him?
exactly. Well, and D Rose kind of famously won that early MVP when like LeBron maybe should have had it. Is Akira
Yeah.
Toriyama the LeBron of manga? Maybe.
Well, it's interesting too because there are some references to Dragon Ball in this
hmm
series that just like randomly appear. There's one chapter that I'll actually mention later because it also has other references to jump stuff in it. There's a chapter that like stars Matsumoto himself
hmm
as this Kappa like monster creature.
Yeah.
They're on the beach and you can see Master Roshi from Dragon Ball like in the crowd of people,
hmm
which is pretty cool because like Dragon Ball was still obviously like big at this time, but it was also new.
I think it was
So
pretty new. Yeah.
yeah, like doing a Dragon Ball reference would be like somebody dropping a Blue Box reference
hmm
in a series today.
Yeah. Yeah. Very me and Roboco.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought that was cool, and
hmm
I'll bring that chapter up later because I do think it's a very one of the cooler chapters in this series, but
hmm
not relevant right now.
Yeah. So to get into like, I guess kind of the general overview of Kimagure Orange Road. Kimagure Orange Road is a like a rom com series about this guy Keisuga who basically he can't not really necessarily like choose between, but is kind of caught between two girls in this love triangle. Marika Ayukawa and the other girl's name is escaping me now.
Yeah, her name is Hikaru
Hikaru.
Hiyama.
Yeah, that's right. So he's kind of caught between these two girls, and then he also has like psychic powers. He can like teleport things. He can teleport himself, move things around with his mind, and it's basically just like standard manga rom com stuff.
Yeah.
And this kind of
And to
set
be
the
clear too, he's not like just caught between two girls. Like from chapter like
like
two,
three. Yeah.
he's dating Hikaru,
Mm-hmm.
and her best friend is Madoka. They're
Yeah.
both like I'll get into this later, but they're both like supposedly delinquents, which
Mm-hmm.
I think is like basically just shown to us because they smoke cigarettes after school. But Hikaru is like super into Kasuga. She's like, you know, super aggressive, super doting. And Madoka is like kind of into him. We're never really sure for most of the series,
Mm-hmm.
but Kyosuke is like super into Monica because she's the first person he sees when he moves into this new town. Her like red straw hat flies into his path as he's walking towards her the first time they meet. And so I guess that means a lot to him. He's always dreaming about it. He like has it hanging up in his room.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I guess throughout the series, she kind of becomes his like side thing
Yeah,
because
and
he's
she
always
and
hanging
she
out with
knows it
her.
too. It's not like this.
Yeah,
It's not this thing of like, I don't know. He's like secretly like going after. I guess secretly for um his girlfriend, but not but not Monica. Like she's very aware of the situation. It's
yeah.
it is like it's a dynamic you don't really see too often in manga.
That was part of the reason I initially was like, we gotta both check this out
Hmm.
because we both like this type of series. But to me, like for one, this is a very early example of like a classic Shonen Jump rom com. But two, it's really weird
Hmm.
because like it feels more like a Western like adult rom com.
Yeah.
A lot of the dynamic between Kyosuke and Marika's like, dang, it really is weird that I'm like cheating on your best friend with you. And that's where a lot of the humor in this series comes from.
Hmm.
It's like I'll get into this later too, but it's a series that kind of like makes you, even though it's like a cozy type like low stakes shonen jump rom-com, it kind of makes you feel bad for watching it. Like
Oh yeah.
it's not even a morally gray series. Like it's a pretty like immoral
Yeah.
series.
Keisuke is like a bad person. He's regularly
Yeah.
throughout the series like openly kind of scheming to like cheat on his girlfriend basically and get with this other girl, and also like kind of weigh up the morality of that, but also just like completely throw it aside to like whatever honestly to like in some chapters like grope people and stuff.
Yeah, like it's in some ways it's an extremely 80s gag series. Like stuff like that, like the etchy type of humor
Hmm.
isn't that crazy from what we've seen in series like Mason Ikoku
Yeah.
or Ranma One Half, and the art style is really similar to those as well.
Hmm.
But I think like even in those series, the protagonist is still this kind of character where he's like, oh, I've got eyes for one person. All these girls are throwing themselves at me, but because I'm like in a harem type series, that means nothing to me. Like in
Hmm.
this case, this guy's like, I feel like more, I feel like he's more realistic in a way that makes him a worse person, but a
Yeah.
better character in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. I think he like it's more interesting to follow along with this person that like has no sort of bones about like, well, should I, I maybe I should do the right, or this is kind of wrong. Like he'll think about that for one panel, and then
Yeah.
immediately that's out the door, right? He's not like him and hawing about it. He's just like whatever. He's like, oh, I can sleep with Monica tonight.
Yeah, and even like other characters will be like, "Man, you're a terrible person."
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I guess that can kind of get into like what we're talking about next, which are sort of the characters of this manga, because I think this is really not the biggest thing, because like it's probably the most interesting thing is that the characters, we don't really know anything about them. They're only there in like pure functionality. Like we don't
Hmm.
really get any kind of there's never like really the long backstory for Keisuga, Madoka. Like we get a little bit of her stuff, but not. I mean, still not like really, right? We know that like her
Yeah.
her parents are like famous musicians, and that there's like 6 chapters where it's like, oh, she's going to America, and she doesn't, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So the characters really only exist as just like pure archetypes, and I guess it stands to like mention as well that this is, if not like the progenitor of the kind of tsundere archetype, it is like largely attributed to that, or like popularizing it, that Madoka is like quote unquote the first tsundere character.
And a lot of things I've read were saying that like of the two anime that kind of initially started to popularize like anime as we know it
Mm-hmm.
in the West, like Dragon Ball was one of them, and this was the other one, which to
Mm-hmm.
me is interesting because I mean everybody likes Dragon Ball today, but I never really see this mentioned other than like by hardcore '80s anime fans.
Yeah, I wonder necessarily why that is. I guess now looking at it, it is very like run of the mill. Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I think this is a series that like, while I had fun reading it and I do think it's good, it's not unless you are looking at it from like kind of the manga historical
Hmm.
perspective. There's not really a huge reason to check it out. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
I do think like a lot of the stuff in this has been done better since then, and
Hmm.
you could say that about Dragon Ball, right? Like Dragon Ball in some ways has been supplanted by like One Piece or whatever, or even like
Yeah.
Naruto and stuff like that. But still, at the end of the day, it is like a pretty singular experience.
And I also think like in the late '90s when anime went from when it like really started to become like a phenomenon in the West, like there was nothing like this that was getting
No,
promoted by like Toonami. Like
yeah,
maybe something like Rosario X
uh huh,
Vampire, but that's not really the same as this type of thing.
no, not at all. Yeah, um, yeah, and some of the other characters. So yeah, Keisuga is like he's your classic kind of like rom-com male like main character, and Monica, as we mentioned earlier, like she's at first like depicted as this delinquent, and then
Hmm.
that is almost not like totally thrown away. It's only then like brought up in like brief references. She's really not that delinquent throughout most of the
Yeah.
run of the manga.
Like I think on one hand there's this part of the story that's like, you know, oh, like rumors spread in high school, and just because people say this doesn't mean it's true. But on
Hmm.
the other hand, like I think it would be more impactful in the story if we had like stuff from her past come up, because it happens exactly one time when they go to like some like '80s like disco, and we
Mm-hmm.
see two like people in their early 20s be like, "Oh, it's Monica and her new boyfriend,"
Yeah.
and they're like, "She's crazy."
Hmm.
And then like we never see anything become of that. It's never referenced again. It's We're always just told that like at one point in her life she was a delinquent.
Yeah, and similar things happen for Hikaru as well. Hikaru is introduced as like kind of the Monica's sidekick,
And
and
it's much less believable for her,
oh
even as bad as it is for Monica.
yes, because immediately she's not a delinquent. Immediately she
Yeah,
is like the classic kind of like hanger on like first girlfriend in one of these series, right? I'm trying to think of like
right.
the Nisekoi analog, but like, she's one of those, the one who is like immediately falls for the main character, and he's like, well, yeah, she's attractive, so I guess I won't say no.
Mhm. And like I guess for me too, a big part of like the way these characters are introduced is that like they're delinquents, they have a shady past. And I
Hmm.
have the same problem with Kyosuke in a different way, because the first chapter, a big part of his like personality or character introduction is that he's secretly a psychic,
Yeah.
and his family was on the run for years for some reason, because like people hate them and people are afraid of them.
Hmm.
And although like he has these powers and supposedly he can't tell people about them, it really like doesn't affect his character at all. And in
No.
fact, for someone who he really even doesn't use these powers for bad as much as you would expect him to do as a character. Like he does occasionally do some like, you know, sleazy stuff by
Hmm.
like there's a recurring gag where he's like, you know, going on two dates at once and it's kind of like disappearing, going to somewhere else.
Yeah.
But I feel like he doesn't use these powers as much as you would expect him to.
No, which
And they
is
kind of explain it away by being like, oh, he has like limited access to
hmm
them. But I don't know. I feel like there's a lot more they could do with that, because to me, it's just like that's less a part of his character than him being like a cheater is.
yeah, I almost feel like it really is only put into the story as a way to like appeal to a jump audience, I feel like. Because if
Hmm.
he didn't have the powers or whatever, like the story really wouldn't change, right? Like there's a few story beats that they'd have to switch up in like some chapters, but like you could easily like wash over the powers thing. I think it really is only there so that people who are reading Shonen Jump are like, oh, this guy has psychic powers, got it, right? Like, you know, this
Yeah.
chapter came right after Dragon Ball. So he needs to like there needs to be some amount of like, is he going to use his powers? Is he going to get figured out? And you know, the answer is generally like no.
And I think to me, like the main benefit that it has to the mangaka, not the reader, is that it's a way you can just generate a concept for a chapter because
Hmm.
this is a long rom-com like gag type series, and even though there is an overarching story, a lot of this is just going to be like an episode, like
Yeah.
episode of the week type thing.
Hmm.
And to me, like that can work because we have series that are similar to that. Like today in Jump, we have Witch Watch, which is
Hmm.
a sort of rom com gag series about someone with
With powers.
supernatural
Yeah.
powers. Unfortunately, I think this series powers are just kind of lame.
Hmm.
Like he can like disappear, he can like make stuff levitate, and occasionally he just like travels through time for no reason.
Gets hypnotized and stuff because his
Yeah.
siblings also have powers. Yeah.
And it's like, I mean, that's kind of cool, but in Witch Watch is so much more creative with the
Hmm.
powers, or something like me and Roboco, or any of the like,
I mean, even Sket
hundred,
Dance. I was thinking like Switch and
yeah,
Sket Dance is way more fantastical and magical than Kyosuke is in this series, right? And theoretically, Switch is just like a
Mhm.
smart guy.
Yeah, and I think what hurts it also is that like some of the things that happen in this series that we'll talk about later, like the realistic stuff that happens in this series is crazier than the psychic powers. Like the psychic
Oh yeah.
powers feel boring compared to like what the characters get up to
Hmm.
that anyone in real life could do.
Yep, exactly. And honestly, those were the only three like real characters in the series. Well, and Hikaru, I guess we didn't really like mention Hikaru too much because honestly, Hikaru is like outside of like Kyosuke and Madoka, she is like the next biggest character, but she's also probably the most one note of all of the characters
Mhm.
until the last like three chapters when she really kind of becomes a character that like does things other than like run and wrap her arms around Kyosuke. Um, but that's like really it, you know, like we said, she's introduced as like this delinquent character and that's like very quickly thrown away. And that's kind of all she's got. Kyosuke also has siblings who honestly I think are like some of the more fun characters to hang out with in the
Mhm.
manga, but they are not touched on very much. uh
I like that his one sibling's whole thing is that she just like eats a lot,
yeah.
and that's like her main character trait, which is very Shonen Jump.
Hmm.
But she's not the protagonist, and she's not like a male character, so it's interesting in that regard.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
kind of unique.
Hmm. Yeah. And then the next kind of biggest character is probably Yusaku, who he's like the, you know, he's the rival character, I guess. He's the one sort of vying for Hikaru's attention. So he's sort of, you know, he trying to get in Kyosuke's way and sabotage him in various ways in that regard. And Yusaku, I actually feel like is much more interesting in the anime. He's actually like a pretty good
Mhm.
character there, and like when he pops up, it's kind of fun. In the manga, he I think like largely just kind of exists.
Yeah, I felt like there's some ways I think the manga is a lot better, in some ways the anime is a lot better. But I
Hmm.
do think that in the anime they've improved some of the characters or removed ones that don't really do much of
Yeah.
anything.
Well, one of the big things I think they do in the anime is they sort of they remove a lot of, especially Kyosuke is like a very different character in the anime. I feel like in the
Hmm.
anime, think he is like a much more like sincere and like less evil character than he is in the
Yeah.
manga. You know, in the manga he is like he's always scheming, always plotting and stuff like that. And in the anime he just kind of like finds himself in these situations a little bit more than like in the manga
Hmm.
where he is like seeking them out.
Yeah. We also there's like later on in the second half of the series we see Kyosuke's cousins a lot more.
Hmm.
His younger male cousin, whose name is let me Kazuya
Yeah.
is extremely annoying and one of the probably my least favorite character in the series.
Hmm.
Basically, he's just supposed to be a younger version of Kyosuke, who
Hmm.
is like even more creepy than he is.
Yeah.
And basically, anytime he appears, he just like switches bodies with Kyosuke, and nothing
Hmm.
happens that is of any consequence to the series.
Yeah. And his other cousin is Akane, who is presented as like a lesbian character, I guess,
Yeah,
in the
that
series.
was
And it, I'll say, I'm not gonna say it's like done tastefully, but like
no
for
nothing in this
but
series is
for
done taste.
but for a manga made in like 1985 or whatever, you're sort of like not as bad as it could have been.
Yeah, I've seen works in like the past 5 years
Yeah.
in anime, so it could be a lot worse.
Hmm.
I was gonna say the same thing. Like, I actually thought she was one of the more interesting characters in this series.
Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, and then the other kind of big characters I think are Kyosuke's grandparents who come into play, and really his grandpa is there the most, and he's only really there to be like, hey, look, we do have powers, and uses powers all
Yeah,
the time, and then also like offers some like vaguely sagey advice to Kyosuke and his friends.
and he's also like a master Roshi type character too, in that he's extremely creepy.
Yeah, yeah, he is also a giant perv, as is like all of the male characters in this manga,
Yeah,
though, except for the dad. The dad, Kyosuke's dad, is actually like, I
that's
think for the most
true.
part, like a chill guy.
Yeah, he's a photographer
Hmm.
and he's reluctant to like photograph women, so I guess
Yeah, yeah,
that's kind of
only
cool.
shoots landscapes.
Yeah.
Um, all right, let's get into kind of like the core of the series, like plot, setting, that kind of thing. I think the first note, or like the first thing that really jumps out when you're reading this manga, is that this is like pure 1980s Japan. Whether it's like the manga, the anime. I mean, the anime, the first opening theme,
Oh,
incredible.
the open
I
all
mean,
of the music is so good.
I,
Like every theme, all
mhm.
like 8 of them.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sucker for any like 80s Japanese city pop song that has like a 3 word like English hook.
Yeah.
Like this one is like the first one is, I don't know what it is, like nighttime in the summer or something like that. It keeps
Yeah.
saying, it's awesome. It's great. It's one that like I'll frequent like skip the opening, and that one sometimes I'm
Mhm.
just like I'm just gonna let it play. Like let's go.
Yeah. And I think like both of these have like music as a big part of the series.
Hmm.
And I think in the anime it goes a lot harder into like the city pop element of it.
Yeah.
You were telling like cuz in the Monica's in a band, which isn't explored enough for me in either iteration of the series.
Hmm.
In the manga, she's like a keyboardist, but in the anime, she plays the saxophone.
Yeah.
So to me, like saxophone is city pop
Hmm.
AF, and there's a lot of saxophone in like all of these themes. So I thought that was cooler,
Hmm.
and also makes her. I mean, I guess I can't really see a delinquent, quote unquote, playing keyboards or saxophone in a band. Those are very like dorky
Yes, those are
instruments.
nerd instruments. Yeah.
Yeah, like she needs to play like the bass or the drums or something.
Yes. Yeah. She would be in percussion as a
Yeah.
delinquent. Yeah, and I think another thing I read, and I can't like confirm this because I don't know the Japanese popular music at the time, but apparently the anime also like featured just like pop songs in it, and there are a few
Mm.
times when like there will be just like a song playing in the background, and you know I guess that's not like just for the show. They were just like songs that might be on the radio and stuff, which I think is interesting. You don't really see that a lot nowadays. I
Yeah.
assume
And
licensing stuff is way more annoying.
yeah. There I've noticed too there were a few references to like popular western music in this series. I wish there were more,
Hmm.
but like there's a scene early on where Madoka and Kyosuke go to a show. Doesn't really say who it is, but one of the like background characters has a shirt for this band the Stranglers, which was like one of the first like goth like
Hmm.
new wave type bands
Oh,
from
interesting.
I can't remember if I think they're British, but
Hmm.
I was like, oh, that's a kind of a obscure like cool reference for the time.
Yeah.
Obviously, I'm pretty sure like ABC or whatever
ABCB.
ABC
Yeah.
ABC.
Hmm.
I felt like that had to be like an AC/DC reference.
Or like a CBGB's type play kind of
Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that's what I was assuming as well. One of the things that I just really like loved about this manga is how many times that you're reading it, and there are panels that just like we've talked about manga in the past that just have these panels that are like completely wild. This
Hmm.
one, the amount of stuff that I screenshotted of this, and I'm just like, I just kind of like I just need to like have that stash. There's one panel in particular I know where Monica's like, they're dealing with like the police, and she says, "Well, I hate perverts, but I hate pigs even more."
That's
This is just
awesome. I'm looking. I had a couple too that I was like, because there were a bunch of as much as there were like some music references, there were way more pro wrestling references from
mm,
the 80s,
hmm
and that seems to be the case with a lot of manga from like this era. Um, and even like newer ones, I feel like there's a very big overlap between mangaka and pro wrestling fans. But there's one section where like they're talking about going to the States. They're actually going to Hawaii.
hmm
And Kyosuke's like, oh, Matic, I can't go there because there's going to be a lot of like hot guys there. And like the guy that he's thinking of is like Hulk
Yep.
Hogan. And I'm trying to find like one of the other screenshots, but there's one that was like specifically referencing like a I think a New Japan Pro Wrestling match that would have been happening like around that time
Mm-hmm.
with like real names of people. Here, I think it's. So let me see if I can find the names.
Well, they
I think I.
even there's even like a little mini, I think like a multi-episode wrestling kind of arc in the anime that I think is like anime only. I don't think it exists like
Mm.
in the manga where his sisters are like all into pro wrestling, and they're like,
Oh,
"Oh, we're
that's.
gonna go wrestle," and like Monica's there, and she's like a wrestler and stuff, and they're like getting trained and things like that. So it definitely feels like a thing that like I wonder if it was like really starting to like take off in Japan at that time because
Well,
isn't
even in
Kinnikuman
America,
like a pro wrestling or like
yeah,
a wrestling related manga? So I have to imagine that like maybe that's when it was really like getting big.
yeah. Because like early 80s, like it was starting to get huge in America too
Hmm.
because of like Hulkamania and stuff like
Sure.
that, and so it was definitely like crossing uh crossing the seas and
Hmm.
stuff. But there's a part where this guy's like, it's the day of the match between Stan Hansen and Giant Baba, which were like two big one of them being like an American wrestler that
Okay.
had come to Japan, and another one being like a legendary
Mm-hmm.
Japanese wrestler who's like really tall, kind of like a Andre the Giant type figure.
Sure. That's funny.
But yeah, I guess this is just like sort of like a nerd fan service thing where they're like, oh yeah, these manga fans are gonna love this when
Hmm.
I reference their favorite wrestler.
Yeah. The other sort of aspect that I really want to hit on with Kimagure Orange Road is that the actual like plot itself, one, so I'll say that like we're going to like spoil the plot, but like you can't really
Yeah,
spoil Kimagure Orange Road if you've read
there's like
literature
four
at
major
all.
plot
Yeah, if
points
you've
too.
watched a movie or like seen a TV show at all, you know what's happening in Kimagure Orange Road. There's nothing ever really like that surprising. And yeah,
Yeah.
there's like four plot points. But the story is like very, very, very cyclical. It is,
Hmm.
not only like episodic, as we said, but like even, there's a lot of episodic series that, um, like Witch Watch, that has like an overarching story. And it's like, well, okay, you can't really experience this like episode to episode. Kimagure Orange Road, you definitely can. You could just like pick this manga up like once every 3 weeks,
Hmm.
read it, and be like, got it, I'm good. I
Yeah.
understand what they're doing this time. And if you do that, you might still experience the same exact kind of chapter like 3 times. The amount of times that like whatever he has like a dream, and he dreams and like thinks that okay, if I dream it will come true, and it does come true, but in some like way that you wouldn't initially expect,
Yeah.
that kind of thing. There's all of these different parts that like just over and over and over and over and over happen again.
And I think at this time that was a bit more common than it is now, probably because now like back issues and back like episodes of different series are much easier to come by,
Hmm.
more accessible to people. Whereas I think back then they're more thinking of like, you know, somebody might be picking this up for the first
That's
time.
fair. Yeah.
Even
Hmm.
Dragon Ball was like that for a while because it's a really long series where you get a lot of stretches where nothing like major happens
Yeah.
in
Yeah.
the first Dragon, like the first iteration of Dragon Ball.
Hmm.
Like
Yeah.
you can skip big parts of that and it wouldn't matter.
Hmm. Yeah, and I think probably part of it too is like they're still kind of like figuring out. I mean, this isn't like
Mm-hmm.
early manga, but like it's really not that far removed from like Tezuka, which
Yes.
is, if not like the exact like kind of quote unquote first mangaka, he's like the first one that like people really kind of like latch on to and like sets the tone for a lot of this stuff.
Mm-hmm. And I think this type of series actually translates pretty well to anime
Mhm.
because you can really just take a chapter and like plug certain things in and it kind of works. The vibes and like the atmosphere of the anime are well constructed enough that you can just like take any of these situations, put it in there, and it's a pretty decent like
Mhm.
20-minute show.
Well, and I think we should say too that the anime, it's like its own thing. There's so many things that
Mhm.
happen in the anime that do not happen in the manga. A bunch of things that happen in the manga that are never like touched on in the anime. It is like it is an adaptation in like kind of name only and characters, I
And
guess. And even then, they change the characters.
yeah, and you'll rarely hear me say this, but I think the anime is better.
Yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, I think it is. It does a much better job of like capturing. I think like the a like specific tone and atmosphere than the
Yeah.
manga does. I think the manga it actually I think it's pretty interesting that Matsumoto it actually takes a while for the manga to feel like there is like a person's voice behind it. Like really early
Hmm.
on in the manga, it just feels very like rote and just like okay, this is how to
Yeah.
make manga almost. And then later in the series, it feels like he starts to kind of get into a rhythm of like you can like feel the touches a little bit more later on that I think are not there at all early. Especially like early on, the characters are even more just like only these kind of like stereotype archetype characters, and
Mm.
he lets them breathe not much, but like they become their own people a little bit later on in the series.
And I think a lot of that starts to come through when we get to that one chapter that I was talking about before, where Matsumoto and who I think is supposed to be Hisashi Iguchi
Mm-hmm.
end up going to do like location scouting on his vacation to a beach. And the reason I think it's Hisashi Iguchi is like, for one, they were like active around the same time. Two, he's like my friend
HI,
HI.
yeah.
Yeah. And then three, he's like, oh, he works for an advertising agency.
Mm-hmm.
And Hisashi Iguchi did like these really famous Denny's ad campaigns that kind of cemented him as a figure of like pop art
Mm.
in Japan. Um, so they're like, we see this chapter of them like hanging out, and Sashi Gucci is like looking super new wave in his like suit and sunglasses, which he was like considered to be like the father of like not just like pop art in Japan, but also like the city
Mm.
pop
Mm-hmm.
aesthetic. He did a bunch of album covers and stuff. So I think that's also a point too where like they're hanging out and you start to see the city poppiness and more of like the music element coming into Kimagure Orange Road.
Yeah.
I think also that's probably because like I don't know exactly when city pop like really started, like the way we know it today started to like
Mm-hmm.
take off, but this is like the mid 80s too. So I think he's probably just like kind of cashing in on that trend as well.
Yeah. Yeah. That chapter definitely is like it is the turning point where after that one the plot starts to kind of quickly like actually become a thing that's like okay this is going to wrap up at some point.
Mm.
And like there's just panels in it after that, and they're sprinkled throughout early on where like the guy can draw. That's not really like reflected
Yeah.
early on in the series, but like later on there are some like there's stretches of chapters where you're like oh he's really going for it now.
My favorite part of that chapter too is when like near the end he sees the characters like from the series when he's at the beach, and it's like a scene that actually happened earlier in the manga, and then you
Mm-hmm.
see him being like, no, take me with you.
Yep.
I loved that. That was
Mm-hmm.
so cool because Hisashi Iguchi in like Stop Hibarakun, which is like one of the few series out there that you can even read in English right
Hmm.
now, which is crazy to me because like his stuff is like huge and really influential in Japan. But in Stop Hibarakun, he inserts himself into this series a lot, and
Okay.
I think that was way more common in the
Hmm.
'80s. I think they should bring that back. I kind of like the meta
Yeah,
elements.
it's kind of fun, especially for like a series like these to just have like the author be sort of like along for the ride.
Yeah,
Didn't the guy who did like Touch and Mix and those
I was
series
just
do
about to
that?
say
Yeah.
that. Like, he's probably like the biggest
Hmm.
offender for that.
And whatchamacallit, Toriyama does it a lot in Doctor Slump
Hmm.
as well. So yeah,
Yeah,
I would like to see that brought back a little bit. I think the dude who does me and Roboco does it every now and then, but
that's
that's
true.
really the like of the current Jump roster. I think that's really the only one that I can even think of.
Yeah, I was like pretty. It was kind of like a whole trope back then because
Hmm.
I'm trying to remember. I think it's a thing in Kaneko Man as well because I
Mm-hmm.
read the first like 50 chapters of that.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Let's see. And then the only other kind of note I had on just like, you know, the series like plot, that kind of thing, is that it is a very like it's very clearly like a male targeted rom com, which like
Yeah.
obviously it ran in Weekly Shonen Jump, but like even something like like a modern one like Blue Box or Witch Watch, they're not like quote unquote like masculine series, but this one like
Hmm.
definitely is, right? Like this is targeting like 13-year-old boys and stuff. And I found it like really fascinating because, even like Nisekoi and stuff like that, where like, it has like kind of etchy humor and stuff, or We Never Learn. They, those series like definitely borrowed a lot more from like shoujo rom coms or, things like that.
Hmm.
Than this one does. This one like very much is like, this is Weekly Shonen Jump and we're going to put a rom com in it. So like, what does that mean?
Yeah, and this may be like more of a thing in '80s series, and I just haven't have enough access to them. But like we kind of referenced it earlier, but like characters like underage drinking is not just like a thing that happens in the series, but it's an integral element to this series.
Yep.
It probably happens at least like 30 times, and it's like presented as shocking the first time,
Hmm.
and then it just becomes like part of the characters' everyday
Yep.
lives, and they joke about it, and they smoke cigarettes, which is like kind of presented as like the worst thing anyone ever does.
Hmm.
Because Kasuga, like I'm trying to remember exactly what happens, but I think in one of the early chapters he like makes like the box or the carton of cigarettes like float away from Madoka,
Yeah.
something like that.
Yeah, he in the anime I know he like keeps like putting the cigarette out. Like she's lighting it and he'll like with his powers
Yeah,
like put it out.
you're right. Because then he goes up and tells her like you shouldn't do
Yeah.
that because what if you decide to have children one day? Which is like crazy thing to say to someone you've only talked to once
Yep.
before.
And
But
that being like the reason you shouldn't smoke cigarettes.
yeah, but like yeah, the characters are always up to like crazy stuff,
Hmm.
and like if something like this were to happen in another Jump series, there would be something that's like remember like this stuff is really bad and you shouldn't do it.
Yep.
But in this series, it's like yeah, like getting drunk as a teenager is just like really cool,
There's
and you should do it.
every other chapter they're like, this has alcohol in it. It's like, dude, you should know. Like you're
Yeah,
drinking 4 nights a week. Like you know what has alcohol in it or not.
there's even like one chapter where this like old man is giving them alcohol. And he's like, these are called screwdrivers, but they used to be called leg spreaders. Which is
It's
like,
crazy.
wow, this is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, that is, we mentioned it earlier, but like that is one of the great things about this manga is that like the characters are like bad people. There's no
yeah,
there's none of this like, Keisuke's not this person where you're like, "Oh, wow, he's like a real like hero character." It's not that at all. He's not the guy from We Never Learn who's like, he's just trying to like tutor these girls and like help them out and right and like
yeah,
if he walks in the room one of them's changing like he's like, oh no, walks away and closes his eyes.
yeah,
Keisuke's like, he's got the eyes
yeah.
wide open. He's like,
Yeah, even like because they didn't really do this until the end of the series, or maybe I just didn't notice it, but they start doing that like Looney Tunes thing where his eyes like turn into like cones when they're
uh-huh.
like popping out and looking at something.
Yep.
I was like, wow, the series really gets like Looney Tunes in the second half. They
Hmm.
start introducing like random characters out of nowhere. This is when it kind of becomes a nisekoi type series,
Yeah.
because like after a certain point, it's like you can only do these same concepts so many times.
Mm-hmm.
Because they introduce, I don't know if I mentioned her earlier, but like Sayuri, who was this girl whose like whole thing is that she likes to break men's hearts,
Oh,
and
that's
she's
yeah,
like
yeah.
mad that she can't do that to our protagonist
Mm-hmm.
because of Madoka. And she appears in like 10 chapters, and like in Nisekoi, when she's introduced, they make it out to be like she's going to be like a huge part of this series and is going to be like a big obstacle between our protagonist and his love
Mm-hmm.
interest. And like by her second appearance, she's just like wallpaper.
Yeah, yeah. She's like pure like comic relief or like a character to throw in for, hey, we need an idea for this week's chapter.
And that happens like to three different people.
Yeah.
Because like even there's one guy who's like an actual delinquent who has like a pompadour
Mm-hmm.
haircut and everything. And his whole thing is like, oh, he's gonna be into Hikaru and
Yeah.
she might actually like it. And that was where I was like, oh, this could actually be interesting if like she ends up like getting
Mm-hmm.
into someone. And I really hoped that's where the series was gonna go, but of course it
No,
doesn't.
it does not.
And he is only in like 3 chapters.
Except the one of the
The final chapter is funny
oh my
though. I
gosh,
love
yeah,
that.
my probably my favorite moment in the entire series is like when you know Kisuga and Hikaru like their thing sort of like ends or whatever, and she like
Mm.
runs off crying. She comes across Yusaku and this delinquent guy, and they're just like, would you just give us attention now? And that's like all
Yeah.
they want. And I'm like, man, that is like so like just sad to say out loud. Like, just
Yeah.
don't don't say that.
Yeah, Yusaku is like one of the most depressing characters I've ever seen.
Yes.
But he's kind of awesome. That's why I like him.
Man, I'm telling you, in the anime, he's great. Like, I really like him
Yeah.
in the anime. He's like much more of a like real character, um,
They
than he is
also
in the
put him in
manga.
a bunch of like episodes and chapters where he never was before.
Yes.
Cuz like the one where the dad is like doing a photo shoot,
Hmm. I don't even know if he's been
for some reason,
introduced yet.
yeah, he's just like
Yep.
there. They just put him in there.
Hmm.
And he doesn't really do anything
Nope.
either.
Yeah, he's a pretty good character in the anime. All right, do you have any other notes on you know any of the just kind of core elements of Kamagure Orange Road? The only other thing I really had was kind of the anime adaptation, but I think we spent like a good amount of time on that. That like you said it, and I think I agree that like it is kind of it's the better version of Kimagure Orange Road. I think one because it is like truncated also, right? Like it's 50
Mhm.
episodes, and Kimagure Orange Road, if instead of like cycling the same kind of bit 3 times, you only did it once, Kimagure Orange Road would
Yeah,
also only be
exactly.
50 chapters. So like I think it
Mhm.
makes more sense in that regard too.
Yeah. I think the only other addition I had, and I kind of touched on it, is that I think the series would be better without the ESP.
Mm-hmm.
All it does is just generate filler chapters. And then they kind of, in the final 3 chapters, write some sort of like weird convoluted storyline that proves that like he and Monica were meant to be
Yeah.
together because of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And then,
Well, and
yeah.
even then, to get like to the most spoiler you can do for the series, at the end, it like their I will say the like the kind of resolution or lack thereof of
Mhm.
their story is like actually pretty good. I thought
Yeah, it
like
ends on a very ambiguous note,
yeah,
which is
like
cool.
I think you can like the obvious reasons like yeah they definitely got together, but
Mm.
like I wouldn't say it's like totally spelled out that way, which is kind
Yeah.
of fun. It's not like a Dragon Ball where they're like we beat King Piccolo, so there we
Yeah.
go.
Well, also, like, even though this is a series that came out during the 80s and it's nostalgic for, like,
Hmm.
people now because it's no longer the 80s. Like, this series was even then intended to be, like, a very 80s
Yeah.
series, like, very entrenched in pop culture. Because, like, the final page is, like, we'll always look back on the 80s.
Yeah.
The summers of the 80s, man. It's
Yep.
like this series ended in the 80s.
Yep.
So they were definitely like intending for this to be like a time capsule.
Hmm. Well, and I wonder too, because I mean, I get this way a little bit when reading, when like a series that I've been following ends. like Haikyuu. Haikyuu I got caught up like pretty late, but I was like week to week with Haikyuu for I don't know 6 7 months, and when it ended, you're kind of like, damn, like sort of look back on your time with the manga. Same
Mm-hmm.
thing. Even like Mission Yozakura Family ended back in
Yeah.
like January, February, and while that isn't a series that I'm like, oh my gosh, I love Mission Yozakura Family. When it ended, you get to that last page and you're like,
Yeah. Yeah.
whoa, like it's over. Like you start thinking like, oh, I remember whatever 5 years ago when I started reading
Hmm.
the series, and so like for people who, if you were 13 when the series started, it ran for what 4 years.
Yeah, you would be about to graduate high school
Yeah,
yourself.
so I mean, you'd be like 17, and I'm sure you look back, you're like, oh, I remember when I picked that up in Shonen Jump. So,
Yeah.
it is kind of like
And
a
the
fun
characters in
thing to
this
like, I don't know, like another sort of like meta thing to like throw into your manga.
this is also kind of one of the rare series where the characters sort of age in real time.
Hmm.
Because they like starts like it seems like whenever a year would pass in real life, they actually do like
Hmm.
move up a grade, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it feels very like day by day or week by week, I guess, when you're
Hmm.
reading it. Yeah, they go through all
Yeah.
whatever 3 years of high school, or I guess not quite. I don't know. The timeline is like a little bit weird,
Yeah.
but because like the first part of the manga, he's still in like middle school. Um,
Yeah, but the names of that is like weird too because I think middle school is just like eighth grade for them or
mm,
something. Like when it's always like it doesn't line up
no,
exactly.
I don't think they have like 4 years of high school or whatever. I think they've got.
Hmm.
I think it's technically like whatever your last year of middle school is like ninth grade, and then you would have your
Yeah.
next 3 years. It's something like that. I don't know exactly, um, but yeah. So I think that covers most of the Kimagure Orange Road notes I had. I did have one more, Jude. If I can make the case for a hot take, I want to see.
Oh yeah,
I,
yeah,
I
go
want
for
to
it.
see if you agree. You're more of the
Yeah.
expert on this than I am. Is Kimagure Orange Road the most Lynchian manga? and,
it
and let me spell this
it
out.
kind of
I mean, a lot of
there's
dialogue that is like quote unquote
yeah.
normal, but like tweaked just a little bit more where it's kind of weird. Like if you had a
Hmm.
character in Kamagure Orange Road who put their glass down, was like uh,
Yeah.
love a Heineken or whatever it is they say in Blue Velvet, you'd be like, yeah, that that checks out. Um, got a lot of this like kind of hazy normalcy that like borders on like
Hmm.
these kind of dreamlike things. And I mean, Keisuga often in a trance, often like, storylines that are like propelled by dreams. The a manga that I think is like very obsessed with like these weird normalities of life and just like
Yeah.
kind of tweaks the knobs a little bit.
Hmm.
He's the manga's doing this thing of like, look, everyone would love to have like two girls you're picking between. What if we just did that like a little bit in the same way that David Lynch is like, look, everyone's like wanted to peep on someone. What if you were hiding in the closet when Frank came over?
Yeah, well, even like Twin Peaks is like that too, because like Cooper is like he's always got girls fighting over
Mm,
him that he's like not really that into. And I would say this is kind of like if Twin Peaks was like governed more by Mark Frost than it was David
mm,
Lynch, and it was more in like the soap opera
mm-hmm.
side of things. I definitely see that. Like, I would think if you really wanted to like get the literal answer, it would probably be something like, "Oh, serial experiments
Yeah.
lane" or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But like, no, this definitely like hits on the like very like Twin Peaks like cozier side
Mm-hmm.
of Lynch's work. I mean, they're always hanging out at a coffee shop.
That's true. Yeah, it was just I don't know if it was inspired by, the recent passing of David Lynch, but
Yeah.
as I was reading, I was just like, there's it's here. They're both coming from, I think, similar spaces at some point.
Well, and also, Mark Frost, like co-creator of Twin Peaks, was actually a consultant on Link's Awakening. Like
Okay.
he
Oh,
helped
that's right. Yeah,
create
yeah,
the
yeah.
yeah. So there's definitely some, and Twin Peaks was really big in Japan too.
Hmm.
Like there's a lot of references to Twin Peaks in different anime.
Yeah, I
So
think Lynch is actually like
it's
pretty
not a
pretty
huge
highly
stretch.
regarded over
Yeah.
there. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was my one take I had to. I had to see if that
I
worked.
I see the vision. I definitely, I don't know if I like 100% buy it, but there's definitely elements where I'm like, okay, I see it. I see it.
Hmm. Yeah, there we go.
There needs to be like, that's the thing though. There needs to be more scenes with music in them. Like we need more like live performances within the show.
Hmm.
Then we're really like getting in Blue Velvet Twin Peaks territory.
True. I honestly, I do think Frank from Blue Velvet would make a good Kimagure Orange Road character. He's maybe a
Yeah.
little too explicit for Weekly Shonen Jump, but like you tone him down a little bit, and he'd fit right in.
Yeah, I mean, he's definitely etchy. Yeah.
Walking around with this like gas mask thing. um, all right. Well, yeah, I think that does it for the Kimagure Orange Road discussion. Next episode, we are going to be doing another series. We're going to be doing the Marshall King, the Boichi series. It's got a handful of chapters out. Jude and I have always been big Boichi haters, so we're going to read that and kind of investigate why we don't like Boichi, or maybe we'll read this and be like, we were wrong. Boichi rocks.
I've been proven wrong on this show before,
Hmm.
so
Yeah, I mean, I talked a lot of shit about JoJo's and Evangelion both on this show, and now I'm sort of like, yeah, maybe everyone else is right, and these are
see
both
that
really great.
this is why it's good to be a hater though, because if you're a hater, you can always be pleasantly surprised by
Exactly.
things you thought were bad. Whereas if you like everything, you can only be disappointed as
Hmm.
you continue to learn about art.
Exactly. Yep. There. Yeah, that's the way to be. Just always skeptical.
Yeah. Because when then that's the thing, like you can always change your mind about something, and
Hmm.
it's better to change your mind and end up liking something than it is the other way around.
Yep.
Realize you were the wrong one all along. You were wrong to enjoy things.
Exactly. So yeah, that does it for Kimagure Orange Road. Um, Jude, before we head out, what kind of non-manga, or no, I guess we start with manga, right? What's your kind of manga, anime? What have you been checking out recently?
Yeah, I mean to like riff on a Fugazi title. I've been on a steady diet of moe lately. I've been reading Azumanga Daioh. I've been watching Lucky Star. I think Lucky Star might be like a top 5 anime all
Oh,
time,
nice.
personally. Azumanga Daioh right up there. I still got to watch the anime for that, but
Well,
the manga is goaded.
the anime, I'll let you know, is available sub, dub, DVD extras, everything on the Internet Archive right now. I may or
Oh
may not have
wow,
downloaded the whole zip file last week, so it's
I gotta peep that
yeah,
then.
it's all right there. So very easy to check
At,
out.
as a like as like a huge K-On fan, to me, I think Lucky Star kind of like does everything K-On does, but kind of better.
Mm-hmm.
And it's real fun. It's real meta. It's, I feel like if you've watched a lot of anime in the past and you've been on the internet for a long time, I think it only gets better with time.
Yeah, it's one that I definitely, because it was like a 4 panel series, right? Like the manga is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's one that I've been wanting to like check out for a while.
Yeah, definitely felt like one of the. I mean, there were definitely like series that were pandering to like the anime fandom
Hmm.
beforehand, but it feels like the first one that was like really influenced by like internet anime
Okay.
fandom, just like the internet in
Hmm.
general. So
Manga about like actual otaku culture.
yeah, exactly. There's scenes where like a character like watches an episode of an anime and then like posts about it on 2chan,
Mm.
and they're like, and you see like the thread
Hmm.
on the page.
That's sick. Yeah, the manga stuff I've been checking out. One, I finished up the Me and Roboco anime, and I have to say it's one of those like 3 minute episode anime.
Yeah,
It's it's great. Like it is.
yeah, those can slap sometimes.
The Me and Roboco one is incredible. Like there's parts where the animation, it's like, oh, this is actually pretty good. And I mean, most of it is the kind of quote unquote PowerPoint presentation animation that we have, but it
Hmm.
feels far less egregious than it does in, say, like the most recent Sakamoto Days
Yeah.
adaptation. It kind of fits, and like there's still just like a direction and a flow to it where you're like, this is fine, that it's whatever.
Mm.
But yeah, it's really awesome. It's on Crunchyroll. I definitely, there was the other night I was gonna, like, I don't know, watch a couple episodes of anime or like throw on a movie or something, And I was like, well, I'll just like watch one of these me and Roboco things before I do that. And I watched just like 10 in a row. I just kept clicking to the next one. And I was like, I'm just having a great time. So I definitely recommend like checking it out. It is like legit, like very, very, very good, I think.
Yeah, I also I like tried to watch it a while back and mentioned it, and then like restarted it again. It's really only available right now on like YouTube, or if you've got like DVDs, you can watch it there. But Kare Kano, which is also called like His and Her Circumstances, which is the series. It was like a shoujo series that Hideaki Anno did before Evangelion,
Mm-hmm.
and I think it clears like this is better than Evangelion
Oh
for
man.
real, because it's basically just like Evangelion if it were a rom com,
Okay.
and like with the direction is just as weird and experimental.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's just like heater after heater, and I had like tried to watch it before and just like I wasn't in the right headspace, but now I'm like, yeah, this is so good.
Nice. Well, yeah, that actually that's sort of I've been watching some of the other like the tertiary Evangelion stuff. So I watched like End of
Mm.
Evangelion. I watched the first Evangelion rebuild recently,
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
I've actually got Shin Godzilla on hold at the library right now to
That
get.
one is very
So
good.
I'm, I think at some point we may have to do like a multi-episode Hideaki Anno thing because I've
Yeah,
long been kind of Evangelion hater, but more
you were
recently
proven wrong
I'm
there.
kind
Yeah.
of I'm coming around to Evangelion and honestly just like Anno as a whole. I think like when you first watch Evangelion, you're like, this guy is like pretentious and like I really don't
Yeah.
like him. And then the more you kind of like read interviews with him or something, you're like, oh no, he's just like a guy, you know. Like a lot of the stuff
Mm.
in Evangelion is just like I thought crosses looked cool. It's like you're
Yeah.
right, they do look pretty cool.
I think it could be cool to do like a deep dive into Gynax in
Hmm.
general, because like obviously like Ano is like the big, the flagship director
Yeah.
there. They did some other cool stuff that like he wasn't
Hmm.
involved with, because I've always wanted to watch that Panty and Stocking series,
Yeah. Hmm. Did
and
Gynax
they
do
also
Fully Cooley also? Or was that like an offshoot
no,
type deal?
they did Gurren Lagann,
Okay.
which you might be thinking
Yeah,
of,
yeah.
and they also did that Ebichu series, which is like like the perverted hamster that
Mm-hmm.
looks like Hamtaro.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to peep that too.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Maybe we'll have to do that at some point. And then the other kind of manga thing I've been reading is start up the series Kowloon Generic Romance by
Mm.
Jun Miyazuki. It's a series I remember seeing it like back in like 2020, 2021. It like placed highly in some like newcomer manga award type thing. And I just remember like seeing it pop up, behind whatever would have been debuting at the time, Jujutsu Kaisen or something like that.
Mm.
Um, and then I saw that the anime is starting here in a few weeks, or maybe by the time this episode comes out in a couple weeks. So I was like, well, I'll just start up the manga, and it's pretty cool. One, I think I mentioned on the show like probably a long time ago, just like I have a fascination with the Kowloon walled city, and that's where the
Yeah,
story is, set. So that's pretty fun. And despite having like maybe one of the worst names ever in manga,
yeah.
it is like it's quite good. It has like a just a very fun like chill vibe, but there is like a little bit of like
Mm.
kind of sci-fi mystery thing sort of that I haven't like it's been unearthed a little bit at where I'm at. I'm like 14 chapters in, but it's not like super into it. It's
Yeah.
yeah, just I mean like really good, competent manga, and I've had a really great time with it. I'm excited for the anime. The anime is being done by the studio that did oh man, what was it? It's like a Jump series or something.
Mm.
It's some like pretty big series that I uh, actually liked, and I'm so mad at myself that I don't remember off
Let
the
me
top of my
see.
head
Well, it's
now.
being produced by Arvo Animation.
Yeah, it was
They did We Never
We Never
Learn.
Learned. That's what it was. Yeah,
Oh, let's
I saw
go.
that and I was
That's
like,
a
okay. I was
great
like, yeah,
series.
We Never Learned is sick. So, but yeah, so that series is good, and I definitely I recommend checking it out.
Nice.
All right, Jude. Before we head out, what kind of like last minute bonus recommendation do you have?
Um, Listen to I Am Music by Playboy Cardi. We've been waiting patiently for 5 years. He's got Kendrick on there. He's got Future on there. He's got Travis Scott in there. If you were in college in the mid to late 2010s, like you need to listen to this. It will. kind of complete your life's narrative arc.
When I saw that it had come out, I went to the hip hop heads subreddit to just like see the discussion on it. And one, I should have known that there would not be discussion on it.
Oh
It's
yeah,
just
yeah.
people being like, he finally dropped it after X number of delays. He's finally here. It's like the entire there's someone in the thread like made the observation of like, no one here has talked about the album, only that the album is released. And I'm like, yeah, this is why I don't go on this website much anymore.
If you want to hear Kendrick Lamar say like Cardi's my evil twin on a song, like he has some real corny appearances that I think are corny in a good way.
Nice. Yeah, I need to check it out. I remember I really liked whatever his first record was.
Oh,
Um,
the self-titled
yeah,
one.
and then I
Yeah,
liked Die Lit a little bit, and I just kind of fell off of one rap music as a whole. But
yeah,
Playboy Cardi
yeah.
also after that, so I need to actually like check it out because I know that like a whole lot of Red has had this kind of, if not like critical reappraisal, this like very much
Mm-hmm.
it is like I think we have talked about this of like it's like a touchstone now for a lot of rap music. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean, he's basically like headlined 20 festivals, like just playing that
Hmm.
album and having like, just playing the album, not doing anything, and just having like teenagers punch each other in the crowd to it. Like it's definitely created a whole like industry just surrounding this album
Hmm.
and its cult
It
fandom.
is always shocking to me like how big he is because he's not someone that
Yeah,
like I don't know his. I'm not gonna say
like
like his music's like avant garde, but it's not. Yeah, I think he's like
yeah,
even a little more out there than like say Future was, or like any Young Thug is. Like it's a little, it's kind of weird stuff. It's not like super mainstream. I don't feel like.
yeah, and the whole purpose of the new stuff is just for people to like mosh to. So it's definitely like I guess it like XXX was really
Mm,
huge too. So I feel like had it not been for like there's definitely XXX becoming the rapper of choice for like 13-year-olds in the
yeah,
late 2010s. There's definitely like some sort of butterfly effect that led to that.
that makes sense. Yeah, and then like Juice World in there a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, so yeah, that tracks. Yeah, my kind of bonus recommendation is just the filmography of Bong Joon Ho. I haven't had a chance to see Mickey 17 yet, but I in
Mhm.
kind of preparation, I guess, and just because I needed to check them out, I watched all the Bong Joon Ho movies in order, and they are all except for Snowpiercer, very very good. Snowpiercer is terrible. It's I think like something you can point out to be like this is why any type of like Marvel handing over the keys to like auteur directors still won't make their movies good because
Mhm.
stuff like Snowpiercer is still going to be terrible. But I mean,
Yeah.
Memories of Murder, incredible. The Host, incredible. Parasite. I
I,
watched Parasite the other night and I was like getting kind of tired, so I was like, well, I've seen Parasite before, so I was like, I'll stop it and pick it up in the morning. I'll just like get to a stopping point, and I just still plowed through the whole thing because I'm just like, this movie's great. And honestly, I watched Okja, loved Okja. Cried at
that
the end
one's
of
fun.
Okja. That
Yeah.
movie is incredible. It's just like it's so stupid and ridiculous. And obviously he's like beating you in the face with a giant like like balloon mallet with the
Mhm.
message the whole time. But it's awesome. That movie's incredible.
And I think Barking Dogs Never Bite,
Hmm.
I actually really liked that one too. Like to me that's a real fun like mumblecore
Yeah, it's
thriller.
yeah. I mean, it's solid. And I think Barking Dogs Never Bite is interesting because it showcases this like not like obsession, but this interest he has in like, what if someone lived in the basement? It's
Yeah,
obviously like
yeah.
fully explored in Parasite and like kind of touched on
Mhm.
in Barking Dogs and Everybody. It's like, what if there's a dude down here that like cooked up dogs? Like, wouldn't that
Yeah.
be weird?
Yeah,
And yeah, so I mean,
because David Lynch is kind of it's like David Lynch's whole thing is like what if there's a guy around the corner?
yeah,
Like
exactly.
it's just like kind of in a different
Yep.
direction.
Yeah, and I think Bong Joon Ho like when movies say like win best picture, they can kind of become like
Mhm.
fossilized a little bit of like,
Yeah.
okay, do I really need to like check this out? Like I'm not watching The Shape of Water. I would maybe watch The Shape of Water if it didn't win best picture, but now that it did, it's like I
Yeah.
definitely don't need to check that out if people like thought that this was going to be good. I hope that doesn't happen to Anora. I don't know. We'll
Yeah.
see.
It probably
It probably
will.
will.
It's yeah.
But all that to say that like I think Bong Joon Ho is like legitimately probably like top 3 modern directors now. I mean,
Hmm.
the guy, like I said, other than Snowpiercer, has like no bad movies. Snowpiercer,
Yeah.
though, a shame that Chris Evans is in it, the worst actor of all time. It's really worrying me that he's in the new Celine Song movie because I really loved Past Lives, and I don't want
Mm.
Past Lives, but featuring Captain America. It's gonna be a bummer. Maybe it'll turn out good, but yeah. So I guess that does it for us this week. We'll be back in 2 weeks with, like I said, The Martial King by Boichi. So it's on the Shonen Jump app. Only got a handful of chapters, so if you want to follow along with that one, check those out. And yeah, as usual, hit us with a rating review wherever you can do that. Subscribe, follow us wherever you can do that. And yeah, we'll see you next time.